Hi, I'm coming to you today from beautiful Maryland. Very sunny spring day. And I'd like to introduce a new subject, one that I've wanted to include in the series for some time now. It's always good to start with some psychological foundations because really it's essential to understanding where we might be stuck, what we're looking at in the more immediate frame of our relationships and our challenges in life, and also what seems to be going on in the world around us. But to take things a little bit deeper, I'd like to talk about a concept that's been integrated more and more with characterological psychology, and I think it has great potential for the integration of spirituality, not only in the field of mental health, but just in our wider conversations about human life. So this is the concept of differentiation and the loss of self. So when someone has a tremendous injury that causes a loss of a limb, it's very painful. A friend of mine lost a leg above the knee in college in a boating accident, and he was in a great deal of pain and emotional distress for quite some time. And there are medications to help with those pains, but essentially the body has to learn to stop feeling what should be there and what's screaming in a state of remembrance of what used to be. This is differentiation, and it occurs neurologically, not only with the peripheral nervous system, but also with experiences that are fundamental to our personhood. And I propose that it's more widespread than we think. So, in psychotherapy, where these types of characterological models are utilized in the context of complex traumatization, and really it can be used pretty widely for a large number of people, not just those who were severely traumatized in their early years. We look at these different parts of self, different ways of relating to the world, ego states, we call them. And some are there to give us a sense of who we are in a way that easily relates to others. Sometimes the most common, most predominant self that we consider ourselves to be, that's referred to as the ANP, or the apparently normal part, and there are also EPs, or emotional parts, that may be operating under the surface. But even this ANP may not be the whole picture. It seems that our left hemispheric verbal linguistic awareness, it tends to take on a lot of the qualities of the left hemisphere, so it may be unaware of things that go on with the rest of the body, things that go on with what I believe I've referred to as the psyche, the deeper self. In the psyche, it has its origins, or at least it has roots, in that beingness, that basic, foundational, underlying stillness that if we slow down enough, we might notice is there. And it's so vast we might not even really notice it, especially if we're caught up in the affairs of the day. And it just so happens that I think sometimes when there is trauma, or when there is shame, shame is a really relevant emotion in that it tends to, it's a more complex emotion that has to do with the sense of self. The notion that one may be evaluated poorly and one may not be available or deemed worthy of love and connection. It's a very painful human experience. And so shame, it reduces certain positive emotions, some of the basic emotions. Pengseep refers to these. He's an author that works with affective neuroscience. So the neuroscience of emotions. He talks about seeking, just having an interest and wanting to go out and express engagement with the world. Play, which helps us deal with fear and uncertain circumstances and is really just a lot of fun for us mammals. Lust, which isn't just for sex, although it does include sexual feelings, but there are many things we might deeply crave. And then, of course, caring, which is really part of the heart of the matter when it comes to the loss of self, and especially the influence of shame, the notion that we may not be able to receive caring. We may not experience it for ourselves. In fact, these disparate self-states, they can carry these introjected messages of deep self-criticism, and sometimes sometimes they have something to offer in terms of the denial that we may be encountering with regard to how we might be encountering the world. So there's a difference between healthy shame, which allows us to have empathy for others' experiences of us, and empathy in general, living in a world with others who are their own complex beings. And then humiliation, an unhealthy form of shame, often tied to anger. And based on our experiences in this world that's really been through quite a lot. And by that, of course, I mean social, political, ancestral, current, one might say a neo-colonial world, a world where the self has been denied in so many, and emotions have been seen as weaknesses. There seems to be a way of living in the world where differentiation is the norm. And in this world, if you can cut off the phantom pains of the humiliated self, one can essentially also cut off awareness of others. And it's a great loss. One might even say it's a level of humanity that's not quite been realized. However, I think even babies know what it is to be cared for. So perhaps it's a bit of both. So in the world where each individual needs to strive to care for themselves with limited resources and vast amounts of human suffering, poverty, ignorance, fear, it might seem best to sort of cut off those parts of self that have the capacity to feel shame in a healthy way, to feel empathy in a way that obliges us to act less selfishly. But our world is valued in some ways the notions of tribalism and aristocracy, of privilege, subjugation, even just responding to conflict with those that we care about. When we enter a fight or flight state, there can be a residue of humiliation, a residue of real, almost a dissociative or a dissociating kind of discomfort. When one reacts in a way that's attacking or escaping, those residues are avoided. So actually, by behaving in ways that really cut us off from our capacity to share that humanity with others and see it in others around us, we escape that haunting residue. And the world is what we make of it. So if it's one where power and even corruption seem to be the best strategies, well, that really benefits a certain kind of people. And if it's one that values healthy shame, that threatens to traumatize those who are living in a different way. And I can't help but think of the conflict going on over democracy, both in the United States as well as other areas, such as the war in Ukraine, apartheid in the Middle East, religion, which may devalue children by promoting messages that really are so far from what any of the wiser prophets or contributors might have intended. And so this leaves us with the task of discussing how do we reclaim, how do we integrate the warring parts of self, how do we reconnect with the deeper levels of self which may seem beyond self, that abide in the background, that we may just lose touch with, getting caught up in our own sort of left hemispheric dominance that neglects the richness of this experience. I think it can't necessarily be done fully without help, and that help can come in the form of psychotherapy to specifically work out what's going on with these different parts, what's gone on in the past that we may be avoiding, which is the only response one can have when one has been traumatized, short of a very cautious method of finding a way to desensitize those painful triggers of those traumatized states that have been dissociated. However loudly they scream at us, we often just project that onto others that remind us of our own incompleteness and tragic nature. I think the body has a lot to offer here, and that's why I believe, even though I'm not a somatic psychotherapist, I think there may be great hope in the combination of myofascial body work or other body-oriented methodologies with some of the emerging and really interesting approaches to pharmaceutical enhancement of receptivity to some of those states. Ketamine therapies have been used sort of very popularly these days to really understand how to incorporate some of the experiences that vastly differ from our ordinary consciousness. I think that that's an area that probably we have quite a lot to learn about by creating an amnestic state that's also shuts off access to parts of the cortex, these normal states of self that we just get so caught up in. To have conscious waking experience of that which lies underneath can be potentially very useful. But who's going to speak to us? Well, it could be that consciousness itself, but it's possible to incorporate touch in communication other than the verbal. And I'd be very interested to see where that goes. And there may be other types of integration across these sensory modalities to really help bring us to a place of finding our wholeness again. Because the ways that we constrict our awareness are also reflected in the nervous system that this body speaks to regularly. When working with clients with a schizoid defensive structure, and that's another video that I've yet to make, because I have some very interesting notions of what might occur there on a dynamic level, to say nothing of the genetic and epigenetic contributors. many of these clients don't have, many of these individuals don't have an active awareness of their body parts. If there's a pain, if they step on a sharp piece of rock, they'd be aware of that part of their body, but otherwise, it might not be something that they could feel. So it seems like there's fruitful paths of sensory integration, reversing the differentiation, of cutting off awareness of that which is too distressing to live with. And isn't that really what wholeness is about? So I look forward to exploring with you what our emerging science has to say, and how that can be, I think, aided by traditions and paths of cultivation of awareness that already have been developed. So we'll see where it goes from here, both in these talks and also, I think, in the broader dialogue of clinical practice and spirituality.